If you've been trying to keep up with the housing market, you've probably got a serious case of whiplash, right? One minute, you hear things are finally looking up, and the next, it feels tougher than ever. So what is going on? Are we really turning a corner, or are we just about to hit another wall? Okay, let's dig in and actually make sense of all these mixed signals.
We're starting to hear some really optimistic things from some big names in the industry. Zillow's chief economist, for example, is talking about persistent signals that the market has turned a corner. Now, that is a bold statement, especially after the wild ride we've all been on. So the question is this for real? Is a fundamental shift actually happening?
But come on, we all know it's never that simple, right? A single quote doesn't tell the whole story. We're still seeing this incredibly low inventory and all these concerns about the economy. So in this explainer, we're going to look at both sides of the coin to figure out what turning a corner really means for you.
All right, first up, let's look at the good news, the case for optimism. And the biggest story here, honestly, is that buyers, after a pretty long hibernation, are finally starting to poke their heads out and come back to the market.
So where does the journey to buy a home even start these days? Well, it's online, of course. Long before anyone talks to a realtor or a lender, they're scrolling, they're favoriting, they're essentially window shopping for houses. And it's right there at that very first step that we're seeing a really clear signal that things are changing.
And just look at this number, a 32% increase in Zillow page views compared to this time last year. I mean, that's not just a little blip, that's a massive wave of renewed interest. It tells us that a ton of pent-up demand is finally starting to boil over.
And all that online browsing isn't just wishful thinking.
Nope.
It's actually translating into real-world action. We're seeing a 4.6% increase in pending listings. That means more people are going from just scrolling on the couch to actually signing contracts.
So, what's behind all this? Well, a big piece of the puzzle is a little improvement in affordability. Even with today's rates, the monthly mortgage payment on a typical home is down almost 4.5% from last year. And that little bit of breathing room, it seems to be just enough to convince some people to jump back into the game.
Okay, but here's where the plot thickens. Despite all this interest, the number of people who are formally applying for a mortgage has actually gone down. And that signals a real gap between wanting to buy a house and actually being able to, which of course brings us to the much more challenging side of this story.
Yeah, for every eager buyer who's ready to go, there is one giant obstacle standing in their way. There are simply not enough houses for sale. This is the main headwind that's really holding the market back. This slide right here really breaks down the central problem in a nutshell. On one side, you have buyer demand, and it's clearly heating up. But on the other side, the number of homes on the market is seriously lagging behind. And that mismatch is defining everything right now.
So why is the supply so low? Well, a recent survey gives us a massive clue. A staggering 62% of current homeowners say they have no plans to sell. Think about that. The vast majority of people are just staying put.
And get this isn't just a static problem, it's a trend that's actually getting stronger. Just 2 years ago, that number was 55%. So more and more homeowners are deciding to lock in, which is squeezing an already tight inventory even further.
And if you dig into the demographics, one group really stands out, the baby boomers. An incredible 80% of them are not planning to sell. And because they often own those larger family-sized homes that so many people are looking for, this boomer block is effectively locking up a huge, critical piece of the housing supply for a long time.
Okay, so we've got this rising tide of demand crashing into this unmovable wall of low supply. So what happens then? Well, it means we're not just snapping back to the old normal. Instead, we're settling into something new, and frankly, a lot more complicated. Experts have started calling this a more balanced market. Now, it's really important. That does not mean it's suddenly a buyer's market, not at all. What it means is that the absolute frenzy of the last couple of years is finally cooling off. The market is better supplied than it was, but it is still a long way from easy. This really lays it all out. On the plus side, you've got some small affordability gains, a few more homes on the market than last year, and fewer of those crazy over-the-top bidding wars. But the challenges are still huge. Inventory is way below pre-pandemic levels, homeowners just don't want to sell, and that rate volatility, where rates can just swing up or down without warning, makes it really tough for buyers to budget.
So here's the bottom line, the most important takeaway. When you hear that the market has turned a corner, it doesn't mean we're heading into another boom. It just means we've moved out of that deep freeze from the last few years and into a new phase of recovery. And this recovery is going to be slow, it's going to be complicated, and it's going to be defined by this constant tug of war between buyers and sellers. And all of this leaves us with one last, really crucial question. With all these buyers coming back, but so many sellers staying on the sidelines, has the game fundamentally changed? Is the biggest challenge no longer just being able to afford a house, but being able to find a house for sale at all? That seems to be the central puzzle for anyone trying to make a move in the market today.